Mm-hmm. Precisely.
That
Precisely.
that's the point we're going to end up making here.
Yep. If such a document exists, have to why do people have to continue to advocate for such things, right? So look, we got everyone showing up. Welcome everybody. Welcome, 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 welcome. Love it. So I always say, like, let's just give people a couple minutes to kind of hop in here and get here, and then we can keep going here. Looks like John might be frozen. Yep. He'll be back here in a second. Yeah, his computer has been giving him a real hard time. All right. There he is.
Yep.
All right. Well, everybody, welcome. John, welcome to our inaugural episode of The Dialogue, a show that I am super stoked to bring to all of you. Me and John had such a great discussion last time that he graciously agreed to give me an hour of his time every week to talk about something that just needs to be talked about. And there's nothing more important than the fundamental rights that we all have as human beings, as laid out by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights from the United Nations. And John, what's our plan to tackle this dialogue today as we go through all of these things?
Well, I think it's pretty simple. I think we should just read sections of the Declaration of Human Rights and go through the individual articles that were agreed upon in 1948, the same year the State of Israel was established, and just talk about these things that the world community agreed on in 1948, and just analyze how it's doing these days. What's the health of the human condition and the
Yeah. Looks like he froze again. So unfortunate. And while he's figuring that out, kind of just to keep going with what he's going, is we want to touch on these articles and continue to ask the question and check in on what's the health of the state of the human condition, and why are we as citizens having to fight to preserve these rights that should be preserved by this declaration that was made by all of these other countries. It seems like things are proving rather difficult for his technology at the moment. So we'll see as he does this. There we go.
This is not good that we keep cutting out.
I know. I don't know what's going on, man. It's frustrating. I wish it was a little better, but at least you're here with us now.
Yeah. See how it goes.
And well, we'll see how it goes. But I kind of just wrapped up with what you were saying, that you want to go through each of these articles, and touch on each of these things as we go. Mm. The Let me message him here. Sorry about the technical difficulties, friends. There we go again.
Okay. So are you going to read the preamble?
Yeah, I can read the preamble if everything is good over here. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and read the preamble for everybody. And I think that it's really going to set the tone here for what the intent was behind the document. So this is a preamble of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Whereas recognition of the inherent dignity and of equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. Whereas disregard and contempt for human rights have resulted in barbarous acts which have outraged the conscience of mankind, and the advent of a world in which human beings shall enjoy freedom of speech and belief and freedom from fear and want has been proclaimed as the highest aspiration of the common people. Whereas it is essential, if man is not to be compelled to have recourse as a last resort to rebellion against tyranny and oppression, that human rights should be protected by the rule of law. Whereas it is essential to promote the development of friendly relations between nations. Whereas the people of the United Nations have in the Charter reaffirmed their faith in fundamental human rights, in the dignity and worth of the human person, and in the equal rights of men and women, and have determined to promote social progress and better standards of life in larger freedom. Whereas member states have pledged themselves to achieve, in cooperation with the United Nations, the promotion of universal respect for and observance of human rights and fundamental freedoms. Whereas a common understanding of these rights and freedoms is of the greatest importance for the full realization of this pledge. Now, therefore, the General Assembly proclaims this Universal Declaration of Human Rights as a common standard of the achievement for all peoples and all nations, to the end that every individual and every organ of society, keeping this declaration constantly in mind, shall strive by teaching and education to promote respect for these rights and freedoms by the progressive measures, national and international, to secure their universal and effective recognition and observance, both among the peoples of member states themselves and among the peoples of territories under their jurisdiction.
Right. And so if you go straight to even just that alone already gives you enough of a paradigm that we should be all living under,
Right.
which all progressives agree to. It's just obvious. But, you take Article 1, which was written at that time, the very first one, all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. Dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. There had just been a mass slaughter in Europe, and
Yeah.
people said, enough, we're not going to do that anymore. And yet, the very same year is, I can't remember exactly that year, the year of the Nakba. I mean, that
Yeah.
was a very wishful thinking, but it never really got realized anywhere in the world. Racism
Yeah.
continued, and tribal warfare continued, whether the tribe is European or other parts of the world. So Article 1 has never been upheld. The
Yeah.
spirit of it is sort of everywhere in nice words that are said, but when it comes down to actions that are taken, we see the result of it. Article 2 says everyone's entitled to all the rights and freedoms set forth in the Declaration without distinction of any kind, such as race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth, or other status. That means everybody. That means rich and poor. That means all people have these rights. Not some have more rights than others. Not the Orwellian world that we live in right now, where some pigs are more equal than others, right?
Yeah.
So, that's very wordy, that one. But then you get to Article 3. Everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of the person.
Yes.
Now, if that's the third article, and it's being breached every single day across the streets of Chicago and Los Angeles and everywhere.
I mean,
The
yeah,
guy
look at
who was,
Sudan, right?
what's that?
Sudan, what's going on in Sudan alone
Oh,
is
yeah.
like you have the I read yesterday, there's a big siege going on in South Sudan, and the the opposing forces just knocked out the government. And you're looking at the wholesale slaughter of over like 100. I mean, like the what's happening in Sudan alone is so downplayed, right? And like just with these 3 articles that we've looked at here, the silence from the global community in regards to that crisis is a violation.
Well, this is where it's really interesting, is because as long as these things, as long as it's brown people who are being stripped of the right to liberty and security of the person, nobody really cares that much. As long as the business interests are still being maintained in those regions, this is where the U.S. hegemony has always led people to believe, well, it's not happening here, so we're okay. We're good with it. We have liberty here. We're the land of the free and home of the brave, so everything's good here. Well, it's not anymore.
No.
And so we who know about all the bad things that are going on in the rest of the world that needs to be paid attention to are not in the majority. The majority of people, as long as they're good, it's good. But that's not happening anymore. The guy who was running in his neighborhood and got, down to the cement and 6 ribs broken because he wouldn't move his car so that ice could move into the neighborhood, that's scary stuff, man. That's really scary stuff. So,
Yeah,
it's everywhere, and it's coming to, your street soon. It's now everywhere, and that's what, when people say we are all Palestinians, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about
correct.
The kind of military technology and surveillance technology that's being used against the Palestinians, that will be used by Palantir against people in our countries right here at home.
Yeah.
Article 4 talks about slavery.
Yes.
No one shall be held in slavery or servitude. Slavery and the slave trade shall be prohibited in all their forms. Okay, slave trade, well, they're talking about, the previous century. At that time, it's 1948. They're talking about the end to slavery, which affected the black population in the U.S. considerably, historically. But do we live in a society where there is no servitude? Do we live in a society where everyone is free to pursue life, liberty, and security of the person? Well, ask the person who's undocumented in the U.S. doing servant work at somebody's mansion, whether they're a slave or not. The word slave might not be used, but they are in servitude.
I have really strong feelings on this because I believe that the term slavery is simply it's not that something that's gone away, it's been evolved. You go back to the abolishment of slavery in the South following the Civil War. The Southern generals, they weren't jailed or punished or anything. They were told to go back to their farms and lay down their arms for the sake of just getting it over with.
Right.
What did they do? They turned around and they forced all of these oppressed people into sharecropping. And then when sharecropping no longer worked, they did Jim Crow. And when they passed the Civil Rights Act, it just went into the shadows. But now if you want to, shoot black people in the South, you join the sheriff's department. You are part of their legal system, right? Like I did an entire deep dive into research and violence towards African communities, black communities in the South. And what I found is that not only has that rate of racial violence decreased, it's accelerating. It's accelerating rapidly. And it has done so even faster under the regime, the Trump regime. You can take that any direction you like. You say, okay, well, what have they done? Well, now look at what is a credit card debt really, other than sharecropping? What is it really other than sharecropping? Because you can call it what you want. If you're willingly taking on the debt, the idea of sharecropping was you can be free as an individual. If you buy this land from me and you pay it off, you're free. Except if you never get to pay it off. If a loan itself creates the capital of the loan, the $10,000, I think this is the best example, because a bank creates 10 grand. Credit card company creates 10 grand out of thin air. Poof. It exists now because you said you're going to pay it back. They don't create interest, which means there's a compounding deficit of money created versus money that exists. You don't need to be a mathematician to understand how that doesn't work.
Well, it doesn't work for the people who've taken out the loan. Just student loan, same thing, right?
Yes.
Same student loan. So let's just keep going. Do you want to read the next one? It's Article 5.
Yes, this is an important one. Very simple. No one shall be subjected to torture or cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment.
Don't watch the news.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, you just mentioned, an example of torture or cruel, inhuman, and degrading punishment. Breaking 6 ribs for not moving your car is certainly degrading. It's certainly inhuman. It's certainly cruel. Right?
Oh, blowing up boats so that all of the evidence of the drugs are destroyed happens to be a very convenient way to murder people. Now, when the government starts murdering people, it's obviously breaking all of these laws. And that used to be something that was not even conceived as possible in our part of the world. And yet it's happening. Now, of course, we'll ignore the CIA for decades doing their dirty work, where they're, murdering people and whatnot. So it has been always happening. That's the thing about these things. They're nice things that are stated, but what actions are taken? And this is so blatantly obvious at the UN right now. People are trying to do the right thing, but there happen to be a couple of countries that want to make sure that these articles of the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights never take effect appropriately. And we know who those two nations are.
I would say the United States and Russia, right?
Israel. Well, Russia as well, but Israel, of course, is
Israel. Yes, of course. Yeah,
is obviously going to vote against. They're going to vote with their buddies, or rather, the country that they almost govern. No, I didn't say that. Oh, a lot of people are saying that in public. They're saying, why should I pay my taxes when it appears that a foreign government has more sway over the policies that are supposed to be running my country than my own government?
Yeah. Well, people talk about them moving the Gerald R. Ford to the Caribbean. But one of the things it serves two purposes, because the Gerald R. Ford was the only carrier group under European Central Command, which means they just moved the United States carrier group away from Europe. They abandoned Europe because there's no force going in replacement of that too. So right? So it's like it's a double whammy.
For our listeners, tell them who the Gerald Ford, because I don't know. This force.
The Gerald R. Ford is America's largest and most advanced aircraft carrier. It's the newest one we've positioned, and it was originally stationed in the Mediterranean Ocean. It was put there effectively to back our NATO allies in the case of escalation. It is intentionally put there because it is the most lethal warship in the world by far. The decision to move it to the Caribbean when America has 11 carrier groups, 11, and there's only one in Europe. I ask myself, because you were alluding to the fact that Russia is pulling way too many strings in America. Why did they choose that one? Why would they not have picked any of the other 11? I asked the question because it should be asked. It's the abandonment of the American responsibility to uphold the rights laid out within this declaration, which we've already, and it pains me. It makes me so sick. I report on these boats almost every day, at least 2 or 3 times a week, because it's disgusting. It's extrajudicial killing. And we already know how this process is supposed to work. We know the Coast Guard did this job. We know that 2 people survived and they were expatriated. Why would you expatriate people that were trafficking drugs when you normally would charge them because you have evidence of them trafficking drugs?
Precisely. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, let's stay on the declaration here for a
Sorry, I
bit.
get.
Well, we're giving examples, right? And that's
Yes.
kind of the
Yeah.
point of going through these things, is that
Right.
every single article we can think of multiple examples of how they're being
Yeah.
breached, right? Well, the next
Correct.
one is another obvious one that we keep hearing about all the time, and it's being about, equal before the law,
Yeah.
and entitled "Without Discrimination to Equal Protection of the Law,"
Mm-hmm.
and being protected against discrimination, or even incitement to such discrimination. Well, my
Right.
goodness, that's being broken every single day of the week right now.
Yeah. While it seems like maybe he froze for a second, but to his point, it is being broken every single day of the week, every moment of the day that there is that ICE is out there on the streets. That when you have a United States Supreme Court that decided that you can rule and you can detain people based on the color of their skin. There is absolutely a massive discrepancy at this point when it comes to that idea of equal protection, because especially in America, there's no reason that a person who is Latino should be afraid that they are not being provided and be fundamentally aware that they are not being provided equal protection under the law. And it is so abundantly clear that this discrimination is not only a fundamental part of how this regime is choosing to govern, but also how this regime is an ongoing, and they're actively trying to institutionalize this kind of behavior. And that is where I think it is so important that we revisit these articles, that we look at these ideals that were laid out in 1948 after this horrific time in our world. And when we hear John talk about these things, when we revisit these ideals, I have to continually ask myself, where does the world even sit when it comes to acknowledging these things? And there reaches a point, I think, that it becomes undoubtedly clear that we have lost the thread as people, as a race, as a human race, beyond just the ideals laid out here, but as a species. Like, how have we wandered so far from such a simple thing? And I will continue to read here, and I'm watching for John here to pop back in. But um, Article 8. I'm gonna shoot him a message really quick here, just to see what's going on. All right, I shot him a message here. So Article 8. Everyone has the right to an effective remedy by the competent national tribunals for acts violating the fundamental rights granted him by the Constitution or by law. It's very simple, right? If your rights are violated, if you are seeing your rights trampled upon, if you are taken down, if you are grabbed while you are picking up your children from school and you see them dragged through the halls, if you see, elementary age children being pushed up against the wall and squished against the wall by masked armed men, you are entitled to some sort of tribunal. You are entitled to some sort of remedy for that. That is a right. That is a human right. That if something is done unto you that violates those fundamental tenets of just being treated as a person, your liberty and security of person, if that is violated, you are entitled to some sort of remedy for that. And we see not only that there's entirely an absence of such a thing. It just doesn't exist. And as things get darker and darker here, specifically in America every day, because I think one of the things that is most disturbing is that, the idea that this was never supposed to happen in America. That's the thing where I think that this is most shocking, is that of all the places in the world that this was never supposed to happen, it was America. And America was in a lot of ways, I think that it was intentionally misleading, because if you actually look at the institutionalized racism and the institutionalized hate that has been in this country for hundreds of years, you can go all the way back to Manifest Destiny. Where did the Nazis get their ideals for, ethnic cleansing and eugenics? These things all came out of America. It's more that, there is, and you do have the ICC, you do have these things. And welcome back, John. I'm just talking about Article 8 right now. And how there really is no effective bodies to protect people or provide these remedies to the violation of these other articles we've talked about.
Yeah, well, that's certainly true. That's very clear, and that's part of the fascist takeover.
So I'll go ahead. Article 9. It's so simple. We read these things and it's hard, like, not to scoff. God. Um, no one shall be subjected to arbitrary arrest, detention, or exile. I mean,
All you can do is say check.
yeah, I really agree. I think, like, we could sit here and list 100 things, but it's beside the point.
I mean,
It's
if you are on any social media platform, you see pictures of ICE detaining people arbitrarily and taking them away and not informing their family of where they're going. I mean, just check. We're mainly, I'm mainly focused on the breaches of the United States. When I read this article, I'm mainly focused
yes,
on my neighbor to the south because it impacts our country in Canada here just as much. I mean, not
yes,
yet, but there's all sorts of interconnections between our two nations. And so I'm mainly focused on the breaches of the United States, whereas we know that these things happen in the rest of the world. And we could talk about those too, but we only have an hour. So, let's just stay focused and say check, and then go to Article 10 and then say check again. Everybody's entitled to full equality and fair and public hearing by an independent and impartial tribunal. That means that the judges weren't appointed by the president and they will do the president's bidding. That's pretty clear. Um,
right.
and then so Article 11 is a bit, how can I say it, a bit detailed. It's getting very legal, and some people will be affected by it, of course, but your general listeners, if we start discussing that, we'll be here for another 20 minutes talking about legal things. But
Right.
Article 12 is the one that hits home for a lot of people. Nobody shall be subjected to arbitrary interference with his
Mm-hmm.
private family, home, or correspondence, nor to attacks upon his honor and reputation. Everyone has the right to protection of the law against such interference or attacks. But wait a minute. Palantir is collecting all this data. People are constantly interfering with privacy through surveillance technology. ICE is breaking into people's homes and taking them away without any charge, without recourse. And people are also, in terms of just general behavior, it's become seemingly acceptable to just simply insult people and believe that you are arguing with them, right? So you're
Yeah.
attacking people's honor and reputation just by simply either being racist or calling them right wing or left wing or nut bar or whatever, without actually having a discussion about their ideas. So ad
Yeah.
hominem is what it's called, right? That's going
Absolutely.
on all the time as well. And then, the Article 13 is about, having the right to move and reside in a nation,
Yeah.
move freely without being, detained arbitrarily, and all the other articles, and that you should be able to leave your country and come back, and also later we'll say, that you can get accepted in another country, which is the refugee thing,
Yeah.
right? So Article 14, yeah, there it is. Everyone
Yep.
has the right to seek and to enjoy in other countries asylum from persecution. So
Yep.
that's supposed to be the right that if you fear persecution in your country, you're supposed to be able to go to another country and say, "Hey, I'm going to be, killed back there. Let me
Right.
in." Um, so,
Article 15, I think, is very, very potent.
oh yeah,
Because especially if you look at this attempt to strip people of citizenship, naturalization in the United States,
right,
Article 15, everyone has the right to a nationality. No one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his nationality nor denied the right to change his nationality. One I want to point out because they do use his a lot instead of their.
of course,
But we have to point out when this is being written. Like everything is steeped in misogyny. But I always say a lot of these older documents, like you have to approach the ideal within and understand that we have to adopt them for the time. But
well,
like we said, the naturalization, it's like if you're born in the United States and you are not allowed to be American, you're being stripped of this right.
absolutely right, yeah. And just on the gender thing and the patriarchy notion about language, in French and Spanish and Italian and German and many other European languages, they have a third person impersonal, which is called one. One does not use such language in our time. One does not speak that way because it is too old fashioned to say one. But the third person impersonal is what is implied by the use of his in all of these old documents. They don't mean men only. That's not
Okay.
what.
Okay.
Okay. It's
Thank you
just
for
that,
clarifying that.
yeah, it's just that language had evolved so that it's too awkward to use that. And so his was used for a long time until we had the his/her thing and all of that. But people need to be a little bit less literal minded and a little bit more, let's just say, educated about language and its subtlety. So the other one I just want to point out about nationality is the following: the notion that Palestine does not exist.
Yes.
Okay. There was an issue that came up in our country where a woman had to renew her passport, and she was born in a small town in Palestine before 1948. She was not allowed to put her birthplace of, can't remember the name of the town, in Palestine. She was in fact born in that place that at that time had that name and was in a country called Palestine. So the question that this happens a lot these days, people will say, well, Palestine doesn't exist. But it did, and somebody was born there, and they were born in that place, and that nation had a. So why do we have to destroy the nation's history, because it doesn't appear on a map today? And this is an issue I think this is really important for people to not normalize the erasure of history, right? If you were born in Yugoslavia, why can't it still say that you were born in Yugoslavia? That tells us when you were born in a country that existed at that time. That tells us something historically important. And I entirely oppose the notion that if you were born somewhere, that should be erased from your person. In other words, I believe in this article, beyond the obvious, beyond the contemporary, to a deeper understanding of people's origin and their birth story. It should not be erased.
Absolutely.
Indigenous people talk about the 7 generations. We have to respect and try to carry the knowledge that goes back to ancient times. When we do something like erase a living person's birthplace, we're doing an assault on history and on that person. Totally. Yeah, that really made me mad when I saw that.
No, yeah, I mean, like, this should, like, to be clear, this should make you guys mad. Like, what we're reading is supposedly like that all of these nations agreed to, right? This is a charter. This is being put out to ensure that all of the members of the United Nations, they believe in this ideal. This is the greatest example of, lip service, I think, that we have ever seen in terms of, our history, because like the United States signed on to this, right? Canada signed on to this. Every single one of these countries committing these atrocities, they signed on to it. So what is your name worth? What is the name of your country worth if you're willing to put it on a document? It's like, anyway, I could go on, but to your point, you should be angry.
We should take that one step further also and realize that the Security Council has as its members the people who are supposed to be protecting these very rights.
Yeah.
And they are the people who are vetoing the protection of these rights. So the Security Council should either not exist, or the entire UN needs to be reformed so that there are no veto powers, so that when a power that was deemed saintly in 1948 becomes a demon in 2025, that it should not be allowed to maintain a veto just because it historically was the great savior of the world who was going to, protect the world for democracy, et cetera, all of the mythologies, right? So it's really that thing that does come to mind. Now, there's the next one I think is important worldwide right now as well, and that's the right to own property alone or in association with others, and that no one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his property.
Yes.
I'll just quickly go into the West Bank and say Israelis are saying, oh, it's not arbitrary. We own this property from 3,000 years ago. And
Yeah.
so we can destroy this.
Um, yeah, I think that what he's saying. While it looks like this persistent computer issue is something we'll definitely kind of dial in, during the next episode, for sure. But what he's saying is, yeah, Israel's making a claim that 3,000 years ago they were able to just take this land, this right that they have, to deprive these people of property. Well, your claim, um, there you go. I'll throw it back to you. I was just saying that Israel's claim is on this land is not valid if it violates the fundamental tenets of Article 17, like you're talking about.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Right. And then we go to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. Oh my God. I mean, come on. I mean, we don't even need to start talking about that.
No.
I'll just say that yesterday's news of Mamdani getting
I actually did not. I'm not familiar with exactly what he was going to point out there. So when he hits back, I'm gonna toss that back to him. Um, but one of the things I can point out here in this case is that you had, the United States establish a religious authority, to protect Christian values within the federal government of the United States. Um, that is undeniably another violation of this Article 18 that we're looking at here. So, I mean, it's like as we've said as we've gone down here through this list. Um, the most the most glaring thing that just consistently jumps out at you is how every single one of these articles has virtually no standing in the world we're living in. I mean, it is just absolutely, you have to kind of just shake your head and just, to his point, the Security Council, the people that are supposed to be upholding these ideals, are the very people that are ensuring that they're being deprived. Article 19. Everyone has the right to freedom of opinion, expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas through any media and regardless of frontiers. Well, you know, I think one, John is gonna have a lot to say about that for a great many reasons. But just look at the censorship of these massive media conglomerates, where you actually have um, corporations working in tandem with the federal governments to limit freedom of expression, freedom of free speech. This idea of expression, I think it can expand to how you choose to identify. What is your gender? What is your, um, how do you choose to observe yourself? How do you choose to present yourself to the world? This attack on trans people or people with autism, or, simply having the opinion that these things are more than just a arbitrary, not that you're not entitled to your opinion if it is in opposition or violation of someone else's, right? Like this use of free speech to oppress the speech of others. is very, it's very contradictory, and it's very, very evident in everything that we see here all the time. So Article 19, it follows along that vein. You know, or sorry, I skipped one. Article 18, it says everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. This right includes the freedom to change his religion or belief, and freedom either alone or in community with others, and in public or private, to manifest his religion or belief in teaching, practice, worship, and observance. I mean, there's so many things there. We've gone over before. Actually, I did just talk about that recently again. So I did. Article 20. Everyone has the right to freedom of peaceful assembly and association. No one may be compelled to belong to an association. It's our right to protest. It's our right to speak out against tyranny. It's our right to organize and assemble peacefully to advocate for what we believe in. And the consistent attempts to criminalize the right to protest in the United States, the use of, DSPM 7, to basically criminalize anti-American sentiment or anti-capitalism, and the ability of corporations to attack unions and punish people for advocating for their rights as workers. I mean, I think it's undeniable that this is being violated by governments not enforcing these kind of things in capitalist nations, because corporations themselves, they have no interest in upholding the rights outlined here in the Declaration of Human Rights that these countries did sign on to protect. And this conscious decision to allow this behavior to continue is striking, to say the very least. Everyone has the right to take part in the government of his country directly or through freely chosen representatives. Everyone has the right to equal access to public service in his country. The will of the people shall be the basis of the authority of government. This will shall be expressed in periodic and genuine elections, which shall be universal and equal suffrage, and shall be held by secret vote or equivalent free voting procedures. Well, there's a lot there, but I think a lot has been called into questions in regards to the freedom and fairness of the United States election. You have the recent acquisition of Dominion Voting by Liberty Vote, which is a organization that is owned by Trump sympathizers and the oligarchy. You have countless examples here of the government manipulation. You have all of this data coming out about votes in certain districts being like super skewed, 180, 167% voter turnout for Trump. These odd updates that were pushed through Starlink. So, one of the things I have done, if you are in California, I do have a petition on my page that you can sign to push for hand-counted ballots in the state of California. So if you haven't done that, I would encourage you to do so. Article 23. Everyone has the right to work, to free choice of employment, to just and favorable conditions of work and protection against unemployment. Everyone, without any discrimination, has the right to equal pay for equal work. Everyone who works has the right to just and favorable remuneration ensuring for himself and his family an existence worthy of human dignity, and supplemented, if necessary, by other means of social protection. And 4 of this article, everyone has the right to form and join trade unions for the protection of their interests. I think like this is very, very clear. I mean, Americans deserve to be fairly compensated. Canadians deserve to be fairly compensated. Everyone in every country in the world deserves to be fairly compensated for their work. And companies don't do that. The government does not provide services to supplement the considerable reduction in the purchasing power of the average American for their work. Healthcare has become entirely unaffordable. You're looking at the pretty much entire dissolution of the SNAP benefits for over 4 million Americans who are going to go hungry because the United States Congress under Mike Johnson refuses to do their job. So, just another violation, like John said, check. 24, everyone has the right to rest and leisure, including reasonable limitation of working hours and periodic holidays with pay. I mean, yeah, we don't really see that. Not in America. A lot of people are working multiple jobs. There is national holidays, but look at retail stores, right? Most people work on national holidays these days, unless you're like in an office or some sort of a corporate deal. It's very unlikely that you see, everyone being given those days off because companies have realized that they can make a lot of money. So anyone working in retail generally is not given the opportunity to do those kind of things. Because of corporate interests and a federal government that is not willing to, uphold these values that are laid out here. Everyone has the right to a standard of living adequate for health and the well-being of himself and of his family, including food, clothing, housing, and medical care, and necessary social services, and the right to security in the event of unemployment, sickness, disability, widowhood, old age, or other lack of livelihood in circumstances beyond his control. Motherhood and childhood are entitled to special care and assistance. All children, whether born in or out of wedlock, shall enjoy the same protection. Look at SNAP includes children. Mothers, women are not given, the protection they need for their pregnancy to, have a child and not work. People with disabilities are considered a liability. This is just entirely absent in America, and even the systems in place are, they fall grossly short of what should be in place. And certainly the standard of living with America looking at, I believe it's a 13% poverty rate, is not something that people or the federal government takes considerable steps to ensure for individuals. Article 26. Everyone has the right to education. Education shall be free, at least in the elementary and fundamental stages. Elementary education shall be compulsory, technical, and professional. And I'm just going over Article 26 right now, John.
Okay.
So I just started. Everyone has the right to education, shall be compulsory. Technical and professional education shall be made generally available, and higher education shall be equally accessible to all on basis of merit. Education shall be directed in the full development of human personality and the strengthening of respect for human rights, fundamental freedoms. It shall promote understanding, tolerance, and friendship among all nations, racial, religious groups, and further activities of the United Nations. Parents have prior right to choose the kind of education that shall be given to their child.
Yeah. Which article was that?
26.
10. Yeah, right. Well, that's been a problem in many countries in the world, and now is increasingly a problem as books are banned and charter schools and all of that have not made education accessible to all. That's for sure.
Yeah, and universities are entirely unaffordable, right? So like that's another thing, higher education.
Well, this had been on for so long, when universities were forced to act as businesses instead of as educational
Correct.
institutions, and the banks decided that they wanted to make money from student loans, and the universities didn't protest, then you end up in the current situation where, again, only really the wealthy can afford to, the children of the wealthy can afford to go to university. So it's just that's been going on for 30 years, and
Yeah.
I saw it begin. I had small bursaries at the time, prizes and that sort of thing, but those things have largely disappeared in our time.
Yeah. And why don't you guide us through the last three? And if there's anything you wanted, like I'd love for you to go back and touch on articles that I thought, you thought were important while you were figuring out the technical difficulties and whatever.
Yeah.
Because
Well, everyone. This is particularly Article 27 is, I think, particularly relevant in our country, in Canada, because we really truly believe this. Everyone has the right to freely participate in the cultural life of the
Mhm.
community, to enjoy the arts, and to share in scientific advancement and its benefits. And that means, all citizens have that right, and also the right to request that their governments make sure that that happens through
Right.
arts funding and the funding of proper scientific research that follows scientific method and so on. Um, and that everyone has the right to protection. This is really important. Protection of the moral and material interests resulting from any scientific, literary, or artistic production of
Mhm.
which the author. That means you can't steal artists' work, and you can imagine how that is important to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
This touches on the biggest theft of our time, which is artificial intelligence.
Yes.
That they're not telling you what they're doing, but their technology is predicated on stealing anything that they can that is provided in digital form,
Yeah.
and providing a service to everyone, apparently, by recombining this information and spewing it back to you. And it's being enforced on us now in any apps we use. Pretty well our daily life has been invaded with this notion that AI is going to make everything better.
Yeah.
Um, but it's not just being used for good, and we know that, and that's probably another discussion for another time.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
social and international order. Okay, everyone's entitled to a social and international order in which the rights and freedoms set forth can be fully realized. That social international order has been completely destroyed in our time.
Yeah.
And that is the international this article, I would say, is what unites humanity. This is
Hmm.
where we are supposed to insist that nations will have discussions with one another rather than dropping bombs arbitrarily, and because everyone in the world has the right to these freedoms, and only if there's international cooperation can you protect these freedoms.
Right.
um, and then there's the personal rights is Article 29, which I think most people are familiar with, that you're, uh, guaranteed your right to develop your own personality, however you do that. This also touches back on other, things that insist that you have the right to free thought, which
Yeah.
means that atheists can have arguments with Catholics, for example,
Right.
and they shouldn't feel that they are it's socially unacceptable to do that, right?
Right.
Um, and then it's just about you can express yourself within the law, is I think what number 2 in Article 29 means.
Yeah.
And of course, none of these rights and freedoms can be exercised contrary to this entire declaration, which is basically said Article 30 saying that you as an individual or as a state, you can't do anything that destroys these articles. That pretty well sums up what a lot of nations are doing to their populations right now. And this is why a lot of people are identifying the fascist regimes. They're out on the streets. They know that this declaration exists. They know the moral uh, uh, weight of this document and that it protects them. And that's why they're on the streets in Hungary. That's why they're on the streets in the United States, and so on and so forth. People are
Yeah.
fighting back for these principles, which ultimately the good that can come from the current awful crisis worldwide is that people are waking up and that they are starting to think about what happens when these rights are being taken away from them, and they're in the streets, and we have to keep fighting.
Yep. Yep. And that's what things like this discussion is for, right? Like that's why
Yeah.
I do these things, right? That's why I call it the dialogue, because that's what we are trying to offer you is a dialogue that you can take from us and take home with you. Like we don't do these things because we want you to just sit here and listen and then go and not talk about it, right? Like the reason, you know, me and John make content is because it's the goal is to spark thought, to take what we have here, take that home, and change and engage someone else in the dialogue. The dialogue starts here, but it continues with you.
Right.
So take, you know, these things that we talked about today, and John, we're at the top of the hour, but I want to give you an extra minute because of these things. Well, like, is there any articles that you were not able to touch on when I came back that you have thoughts on? I know you, and I think it's really important that we get your take on, you know, the things that you thought were important in here.
Well, so many of these things overlap now. You know, if you just grab Article 24, which is kind of the unionizing
Yeah.
article, that you have a right to rest and leisure, including reasonable limitation of working hours and periodic holidays with pay. That's basically the pro-union article, and
Mm.
that just take everyone has the right to rest and leisure.
I know.
I mean, what if your society, what if you fear that if you walk outside your house, you might be have a tear gas canter thrown at you? I mean, you're not resting when you feel like if I walk on the streets, I'm going to be assaulted by a masked person, and apparently that's okay, right? So it's just, I think what really, when we prepared for this interview today, our talk today, that's what struck me more than anything is these things all overlap, and
Yeah.
they're all being breached on multiple levels. And I just can't go back to one and say, because they're
Yeah.
all um, they're all interrelated, and they're almost every single one of them is being denied right now,
I agree.
um, based on various things like racism, and just it's a general societal problem where people have, like I said before, people are attacking each other as though they are animals, instead of enlightened human beings who think about things. And like you said, we're here to invite people to think further about these kinds of things. We're part of a movement, I would say, of people. It's not an organized movement, but it's just a bunch of us who just really want people to think about things rather than feel that they have to follow a thought, or that the person who's talking to them on the screen right now needs to dominate them, and that
Hmm.
they must comply and obey. It's
Yeah.
quite the opposite. You have to open your mind and try to be respectful of others, and try to listen to what the argument is, and not look at the color of their skin, or look at any of these other things that are ad hominem, just try to attack people to shut down any thought. We don't move forward if we're shutting down people's thought based on anything other than the thought that's going forward, and to understand that knowledge is shared by all of humanity, and we all can have access
Yes.
to the information if we are open to dialogue.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
that's where I think like the best thing like is this idea is like, you know, it's the merit of the mind, right? Like if you want a real meritocracy, then the merit you know, the merit you should measure, your fellow individual by is not that of the amount of money they make or whatever they contribute to whatever idea. It's the merit of the ideas that they bring to the table. And I think that what you can take away from today is when you look at an action instead of, too, it's like so many of us here in America, well, this is a violation of the Constitution. Well, America agreed to this entire declaration. They are also in violation of the ultimate charter of the earth, of humanity.
Right.
Okay. So like, not only, next time someone says, well, this is violating the Constitution, well, also it's actually directly violating the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Add it on there, tack it on there. Like,
yeah. And you can add one last thing that I think has become clear more recently. And that is that if you assign these rights to, if we have these rights, then we, for example, food security, then we also have the right to demand that our environment that we live in, the water, the food, the things that sustain us. This is basically a protection of the person, the individual, but also of the community to survive. And so the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is also a declaration that humans should take care of their environment.
Yes.
Because if we don't take care of the environment, we're not taking care of ourselves.
Yeah.
And this is where some indigenous thought becomes very pertinent, when the indigenous thought of husbanding and taking care of the land. When you take from the land, you don't take too much. You don't take too many fish. You make sure there's enough for next year or for the 7 generations coming up. And that kind of thinking, where we are taking care of the planet, taking care of the planet is taking care of ourselves.
I think that's a fantastic wait, yeah, go ahead. You have more.
I just wanted to say one last thing, and that Noam Chomsky is one of my heroes. And my favorite quote that keeps coming through all the time is when he's asked, why are you doing this? He just says, I just want to help people with intellectual self-defense.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what we're doing.
What a fantastic note to end on. From a composer to close the dialogue today. Thank you all so much for joining us. And, I think this was a great discussion, and maybe you alluded to maybe AI would be a great discussion for the dialogue next week. We'll convene offline here and do that. But, I'm so excited to be able to bring this dialogue to you guys every Wednesday, as long as, we can keep doing this, because the world needs more dialogue. The world needs this is a great discussion because you have a Canadian and an American. You have a dialogue not only between people, but you have between neighbors. You have different nationalities. This is not only a discussion between, it's an ability for us to start a dialogue between Canadians and Americans in this chat, where we have a viewership I think it's something that can be contagious. And I'm just so grateful to have you here with me, John. And I'm certain we'll as we get better with this, we'll figure out the technical aspects of it, and it's a learning experience as well. But thank you so much, everybody. Please subscribe and support both of our publications. And I've got nothing else to add. Do you have anything else, John?
No, let's keep the conversation going. It's good.
All right. Goodbye, my friends, and we will see you next week.